Hello, everyone. Welcome back to Awards Buzz. I'm Abe Friedtanzer.
I'm Stacey Yvonne.
I'm Scott Menzel.
And I'm Sari Cohen.
We are here breaking down the shortlists that were announced earlier today for the 97th Oscars. Let's get it started with documentaries. Stacey, do you want to give us the shortlisted films?
Yes, we have the BB Files, Black Box Diaries, Dahomey. I call it Dahomey, but it might be Dahomey. We'll figure it out because, yeah, very exciting. Daughters, Eno, Frida, Hollywood Gate, No Other Land, Porcelain War, Queendom, The Remarkable Life of Ibelin or Ibelin, and a soundtrack to a coup d'etat, Sugarcane, Union, and Will and Harper.
What's the notable one missing? Everyone say it. Superman, the Christopher Reeve story.
There's
Yeah.
always something. Although it did seem to me that this year's nominees, especially from some different groups like music by John Williams, Will and Harper, while important, interesting films, weren't the same kind of like earth-changing things like Black Box Diaries or other things that might be a little bit more urgent. I think it's a great film, but I think it joins wonderful company every year in a film that is always taken off the list at this point, and a film that is taken off the list a little bit later as well when the nominations come out.
I think Daughters is very strong. It has a very strong kind of growing presence. People are still discovering it and really like it's very touching, very heartfelt. I think Will and Harper, though, is going to be kind of the one to beat on this one.
Yeah. I totally agree. I think if they make the five, I feel like that's going to be the sure winner. Yeah.
Well, I wouldn't count out No Other Land and Black Box Diaries, which of both, again, are more urgent films dealing with things going on in the world. And I think Will and Harper is a lovely choice, and I would probably be rooting for that. I still have a lot to catch up on though here, not as much as in some other categories. But what's nice is that about half of these films are available on Netflix or Prime Video, and the other half are going to be impossible to find for most people. And it's always interesting to me the idea of, I guess it's nice because it gives a spotlight for people to seek out these films. Those of us who are awards obsessives and want to see stuff now, and later on those who are like, I only watch the nominees. That's all I watch. So I will be excited to go through and discover Hollywood Gate and Queendom, for instance, find out what are these films about.
I love it. I feel like it's good to kind of it does kind of open our eyes to everything. Like I would love to give more of these films a spotlight. I also feel like Will and Harper also got a nod for Best Original Song, right?
Yeah, I
think
believe so.
So I feel like that is kind of a tell that it is a heavy favorite,
Well,
and it is. Oh no,
something like soundtrack to a coup d'etat is a fantastic doc, but it came out Sundance and then just kind of fizzled. Like you didn't really hear people talking about it. Will and Harper has stayed consistent. It was at Sundance, it was at TIFF, had its premiere. It's really been in the conversation and it's been kind of fresh in everyone's minds.
Yeah.
Yeah, and what's interesting about Will and Harper getting in versus the Superman doc is normally we always see like the true story never getting in. Like basically like the Mr. Rogers documentary was the one that I think shocked everyone when Won't You Be My Neighbor did not get nominated. And it was like one of the most beloved documentaries of the year. So not getting Superman in, not really a shock. But then I'm like, Will and Harper is here. So I'm like, I wonder if it's just because of the politically chargedness of the storyline, if that's why I got in right now.
I can see that.
Well, I will say that, especially in all the short categories that we won't cover today, having seen all the shortlisted films is not actually helpful in predicting the nominations. You'd
No.
think it would be, but somehow there's always a lot of surprises that don't quite make sense and some really obscure stuff that manages to get all the way through. But I think this is a category we all need to catch up on, so we'll be happy to revisit this closer to nominations time and then after that, because we still have almost, actually, no, a full month until nominations are announced. And then after that, more than a month of the awards. So we'll be able to sit with these nonfiction films for a while. For the next category, the feature category, international feature, this is one that used to have fewer, now it's 15 finalists. I will read them off, then offer some commentary. We have I'm Still Here from Brazil, Universal Language from Canada, Waves from Czech Republic, The Girl with the Needle from Denmark, Emilia Perez from France, The Seed of the Sacred Fig from Germany, Touch from Iceland, Kneecap from Ireland, Vermilio from Italy, Flo from Latvia, Armand from Norway, From Ground Zero from Palestine, Daomi from Senegal, How to Make Millions Before Grandma Dies from Thailand, and Santosh from United Kingdom. This list is not all that surprising. I was pleased to have predicted, I think, 11 out of 15 of these, which is, I'd say, pretty decent given that there are 80 something eligible films. I have some thoughts, but I'd be curious to hear what you guys noticed right away.
I have a quick question before we get into it. How many times has a pic, or I guess, is it common for a picture to be in Best International Feature and in Best Picture?
It's become a thing lately. I feel like year
Okay.
after year we're seeing more and more of it. Like it's happening a lot. Like Anatomy of a Fall is a good example of like
Okay.
how that wasn't in there last year, but it was something that everyone thought was going to be an international, but that ended up being in Best Picture. But I think that this has become a thing more and more as time has gone on. Parasite, right, was the other one that was in these categories. Abe, am I correct with that?
Yeah, I mean, there have been a bunch. I actually thought you were going to ask a film to be nominated for international feature and documentary, or international and animated, or all three, because that's coming a lot more common. And we
Yes.
have Daomi, which again is up for documentary as well, and Flow, which people are expecting to be
Yeah.
nominated for Best Animated Feature. I think Emilia Perez and The Seed of the Sacred Fig, and maybe I'm Still Here, are the ones that people think could make the Best Picture lineup.
Well, also, that's also kind of the other question is Emilia Perez is Spanish language feature, but it's considered a French film because of the director.
Yeah.
So I'm like, how do you rectify that? Or how do you place that? It seems very strange.
Yeah, that's a good. I feel like also, Stacey, to your point, I mean, I remember years ago it used to just exclusively be one or the other. It was like if I look back to
Right.
like A
Yeah.
Beautiful Life, or
Mhm.
like if it's not nominated in Best Feature, it's going to be Best International, and it was always like, well, you'll just give them the nod that way. Where now I think it's just a little bit more inclusive. But yeah, that's a good point. I mean, because of the going circling around, like, yeah, because of the director, it puts Emilia Perez, which, correct me if I'm wrong, I feel like that's the clear front runner here. I feel like the way things have been lining up for that film, it's neck and neck with Wicked, I think, for just what's going to take home the most wins this award
Yeah.
season. Like Seat of this, and while it is, I love giving it all of its honors. But other films like Seed of the Sacred Fig and Kneecap, which I particularly enjoyed, I really like that film. I think is going to get just eaten up by Emilia Perez.
Well, I think that's kind of why I'm wondering about that, because this almost feels like a consolation category where it's like, well, if you don't want to vote for Amelia Perez for Best Picture, if you want to do something
Yeah.
else, then vote for it here. And it's like that kind of puts all the other really wonderful. My favorite was Armand. I loved Armand down, but it kind of doesn't give them as much of a chance. I think a lot about RRR and kind of
Yes.
the pains that went through, unfortunately. And so, yeah, this category in general has always kind of interested me.
Well, I think that's a problem. What you brought up, Stacey, is kind of a problem that has been ongoing in a lot of awards bodies in general.
Mhm.
Any organization that has like a comedy or musical category, I feel like it's kind of the consolation prize for that. We saw that happen with Barbie last year at Critics' Choice. And the Globes, it went to the blockbuster category, and that sort of kind of slowly started to kill the momentum of the movie. And I know a lot of insiders and, you know, a lot of the publicists and stuff like that hate when the movie wins those categories because they want that best picture win. But it starts building up, you know, what the real fate of the film is when it starts getting pushed into those other categories. But you definitely made a really good point. And I think people are starting to get a little worried about things. And I think Amelia Perez is something that, you know, I said it from the moment I walked out of the movie. I never saw this as the best picture winner. Never did. It was always kind of the international feature kind of front runner, and I hope that Netflix will continually push and kind of realize that you're literally working with the number 5 or number 6 film on the best picture list, so you're better off really going here where you're going to get slot 1 or slot 1 or 2.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I will say I have many, many, many thoughts on this category. We could just do an hour on this category alone. The first thing I'll say is that I remember when the band visit back in 2007 was supposed to be Israel's submission, and it was deemed ineligible because you have people who don't speak the same language, so they're communicating primarily in English. And you saw that also in Kobades Aida, where she's a translate, like an interpreter, that's her job. And this year, Touch from Iceland, which is great, people are speaking Japanese and Icelandic, and so they really speak English most of the time. And so it's a sort of strange requirement of this category. Universal language from Canada is mostly in Farsi. There's no dialogue in Flow, so it's not really a foreign language film, which the category is not called. Now it's called international, but also Santosh from United Kingdom is not in English. And there's so much of that. The Seed of Sacred Fig also is literally set entirely in Iran and entirely in Farsi also. And so there's something nice about this category being able to highlight films from countries that aren't necessarily letting these stories be told, but some of the rules don't make a lot of sense. And similarly, we see at the Golden Globes and other places where multiple films from one country get nominated. Of course, the idea people are worried about is maybe France would get nominated too much in certain categories, all the time. But I don't know. We also mentioned India before. All We Imagine as Light is the one people think is really on the way up. That was not chosen by India as its submission, and Lost Ladies, which is not on the list. As opposed to a couple of years ago when Parallel Mothers was not selected by Spain, but The Good Boss made this list and wasn't nominated. And so I think that's unfortunate because where we're talking about I don't think Amelia Perez is weak. I think Amelia Perez is doing fine in this awards race, and despite people having their problems with it, awards bodies have been wholeheartedly endorsing it, and I think it's totally fine. But I think The Seed of the Sacred Fig and All We Imagine as Light are sort of neck and neck for that Best Picture slot. With, again, I would not discount I'm Still Here, but I'm just not entirely sure. And in terms of Amelia Perez being the guaranteed winner here, I think back to 2006 when The Lives of Others, also from Germany, beat out Pan's Labyrinth, which actually had a bunch of other nominations. So I really don't know. I also don't know about star power like Renate Rinsve, who's great. We have an interview today up on the Awards Buzz YouTube channel with her. What great timing. I don't know if that will help Armand that much. I'm not really sure. And Kneecap also, like, what's going to happen with that? I really don't know. I know you're excited, Sari, about that one.
Yeah, I love it. Unfortunately, I think it's going to get lost in the mix, and I think that deserves more attention than it got this season. I mean, it did get some recognition. It has gotten some nods, but I really did enjoy that one.
I just think a lot of these films, I get what you're saying, Abe. I think there's a lot of these movies that we've been talking a lot about. And I mean, Neon, like, let's give Neon like a lot of credit, for a studio that is a very, an independent studio. They have been pushing out that movie like crazy.
Mm-hmm.
Like they have been like campaigning hard. I like every week I get an email about it. So that's a really good sign. And I know Netflix, they always have the most money. They put the most money into campaigning. But to see some of these smaller titles break through, I mean, especially Flow, I think that's the one that like really, like, it started off at film festivals and really built momentum, and the potential that it could actually get an animated one and this like a nomination in both categories. That's a great thing for these smaller films. So I always like to celebrate those little wins because I'm sorry. As much as I love the big studios, they have the money to throw behind a campaign where these little guys, when they break through, almost sort of like, yeah, that's what we want.
I will do like another shout out to Neon right now. I literally have the box of DVDs that they sent me
I was
right in
looking at
front of
mine.
It's right here. It's like I wish you could see it. It's on the other side of this whole setup that I have here, but it's like, yeah, it just goes to show like it is
And they
it's
have the
important.
best box set.
Yes,
So I
yes,
always
they
look
do.
forward to it.
Yep. Yep.
I will say though that I wish, while it's nice to see smaller films celebrated, I think it's been since Flea, we've had a few too many opportunities where there have been films nominated in multiple categories, multiple specialty categories, and it just means fewer things recognized. Because I'm inclined to look at this list and say that both Daomi and Flo will make the list, and they'll be double nominated, and that just means fewer documentaries and other international films being recognized. And it's great and it's nice, but I also just I don't know. Something like Walt with Bashir back in the day, I would have nominated for all three categories, but it only got one back then. But I still think it's better to be recognizing more things.
Yeah, I agree.
Well, Scott, do you want to take us to a category you feel very passionately about, makeup? And
Oh, my
hairstyling?
hair and makeup category. Yes, let me pull it up. I don't know what the heck I just did with it. Feel some time, Abe. Feel some time for a second while I pull it up.
Let's just note I've been saying before we got on that this category recently was renamed makeup and hairstyling, but I still believe, based on the shortlisted films, this is much more about makeup than hairstyling. I think that that's based on what's not
Well,
here.
I was gonna say if you're gonna do hairstyling, then it goes to Cynthia Erivo for the 20-inch bust down mini braids, like the micros. Those things have taken on a life of their own, and it is absolutely fantastic to see.
Well, that's why Apprentice is here for Donald Trump's hairpiece. So there you go. So we have The Apprentice, Beetlejuice, A Different Man, Dune Part 2, Amelia Perez, Maria, Nosferatu, The Substance, Waltzing with Brando, everyone's favorite, and Wicked.
I looked at that and I was like, what?
There's always
And
something
who
you
and
have
when,
to
where,
Google.
why?
Yeah,
We're all
that one,
waltzing with Brando, and we hope it wins this
Let's
category.
well,
Stella.
I do think that we are right to think that Wicked is in great shape here. I think that
Uh-huh.
The Substance and
Yes.
Nosferatu both getting in is important because The Substance has been like barreling through award season, and it's important to have it here. And Nosferatu has not. Nosferatu people seem to really like, but hasn't been everywhere, and so having it not here would have been just a death knell. That it would cancel it out. I think so. I'm glad that it's here.
I'll also say that this category seems like it's kind of one of name recognition,
Yes.
because when you have a category like this, you always run into a problem with realistic makeup versus special effects, visual arts. So like a Nosferatu vampire is going to be looked at differently than, Ariana's bronzer, that kind of thing. There's like a difference in there. And because something like this, honestly, The Substance, like the makeup and that was crazy, but that's because it was so special effects driven. It was practical and, that kind of thing, versus Maria, where it's like, you look like Angelina Jolie. You look gorgeous, babe. You look fantastic, and the clothes are great. But like, what are we judging this against? So I do think that it becomes a Wicked category.
Yeah, I would love for The Substance to get some love here. I really
Yeah.
would. And I hope it ends up in the 5. But Siri started this a couple weeks ago with the kind of the Wicked sweep, and we're slowly starting to see this happen. I can tell you, I went to a convention over the weekend. I talked to several awards voters, and the movie everyone's saying is going to win picture is Wicked.
Yeah.
So I think Wicked's in a really good place, but for what they pulled off in The Substance with giving that shoestring budget, I would love to see again. I'm always going to root for the underdog sometimes, and that's one of those movies that I would root for here.
The other absences that I would say from this is like we kind of talked about before we started recording, like even though it got the nods for sound, I feel like A Complete Unknown maybe could have been in on this category. And if there was anything that the Joker was going to get in for, it would.
Right.
So I think this is also a clear path for Wicked. Like I I still stand by that. I think we're gonna see a lot of like Wicked and Amelia Perez neck and neck, and the more nods and recognitions that come out, the more I'm convinced of that. But I still believe wholeheartedly Wicked deservedly so will walk away with this Oscar.
Yeah.
What's their Barbenheimer name? Do we have like a Wicked Perez thing
Oh,
happening?
Wicked Perez! Oh,
Amelia Kid.
Yeah,
Perez.
because that Gladiator one did not work for them, did it?
Well, to your point about Joker, it is on the sound list, but I think you could make a great case for it maybe getting in for makeup, not so much for sound. I also, in the makeup versus hair Saturday night, I expected to be here for
yes.
all those wigs, and it's not. I'm also particularly fascinated by the awards journey of both Sebastian Stan's films this year. A Different Man, which also stars Renate Renze, great day for her, and which won the Gotham for Best Feature and didn't win anything. Like, I don't know, and I don't know how he gets nominated because he literally it's him versus him. But it's just interesting to see both films show up in this category of
Yeah.
his, because especially for someone who's such an attractive actor, to constantly be buried under some sort of makeup making him look different.
I think Saturday night is gonna be costume. Is there one for?
No.
There's none for costume, but I am not counting on it anymore. I think that when you miss enough of these, people don't pay attention. I think A Complete Unknown is also potentially in danger, but
And
those will have to win.
listen, like we were saying, they really are pushing hard for costume design with A Complete Unknown, but it's a tough year to beat Wicked. Like you
They
just
also didn't have nearly enough screenings. I think,
No.
did it just become available for like
Yep.
screeners? Like, and then it came out so late. So yeah, I wouldn't be surprised if they just didn't hold off till next season's awards if they can even do that. So
They can't anymore because it's already been nominated across the board at different categories. It's funny. I mean, the movie is really, it's a shame Monica's not getting more love. I don't know if you watched this movie yet, but like Monica, I think really goes head to head with Timothy in the whole movie. And I think the two of them are really playing on the same playing field. But Timothy is obviously the more like well-known name and he's getting a lot of the love. I'm just going to say it. I'm really surprised and I keep seeing Edward Norton popping up more than her because like to me, she's the one who kind of gives the captivating performance. And I mean, Edward Norton's good. I always love Edward Norton, but like, it's just like, I'm like, it's Edward Norton. Like, I don't really like, he doesn't really disappear into the role for me.
I will disagree with you there, Scott. I actually found both him and Monica made the film for me. People are like, what about Timothy? And it's like, no, Timothy's good too, but the two of them, especially, he's got a lot of fans. But no, Edward Norton to me, I thought was really, really great. And it's interesting because it's helpful to have a lot of support for your film. And this is a film that has sort of middling to strong support. And Monica could really use that. But I mean, we're getting off track. We're not even talking about acting today. But yes, there's a lot to unpack there with that film, which is definitely down from today overall.
Yeah.
So for some reason, the next category has 20. I don't know why. I definitely thought it was supposed to be 15.
They
feels
need to get that
movies
Horizon American Saga Chapter 1 in there. I mean, they were like, this has
Sari,
got to
do you
get
wanna-
nominated. This has to be
Do you
in
want
there.
to start the
I was-
arduous process of
I
reading
was
all
gonna
20 of them?
Is it all just Wicked? Because that's um
Let's look at
okay.
original score.
So the other 19 are Alien Romulus, Baby Girl, Beetlejuice, Blink Twice, Blitz, The Brutalist, Challengers, Conclave, Amelia Perez, The Fire Inside, Gladiator 2, Horizon, An American Saga, Chapter 1, Inside Out 2, Nosferatu, The Room Next Door, Sing Sing, The 6888, Wicked, The Wild Robot, The Young Woman and the Sea. Yeah.
Choices. There are some choices in here. That's all I can say.
I mean,
Yeah.
I'm just gonna again state the obvious. I feel like I'm a broken, no pun intended, I'm a broken record here. But Amelia Perez and Wicked for original score.
I actually I think that we're going to have a slight, not upset, but I think people aren't going to forget Challengers. I think Challengers is going to come out with a big boost because Trent is like, give me my woods. And it's such a memorable score. You don't know you remember until you wake up one day and it's just, just like
Well,
in your head.
but you know what the thing is though that I think is happening a lot. You have these grand performances this year, like we were just talking about with The Complete Unknown with Maria, but it's like you unfortunately really good quality projects and or performances are just getting eaten up by, you know, the by what's the buzz. So, yeah, I mean, you're not wrong, Stacey. I think you're totally right, and it totally deserves its nods. But yeah, it's just how is it going to beat Wicked? Or you
Yeah.
know, or it'll be like you'll see Amelia Perez will get score, and then Wicked will get song, or maybe Wicked will sweep everything. Or I
Well,
just
Wicked does not have any original songs this time around, so it's not eligible there. But
Mm,
that's, I think, an interesting thing is like what score versus song, because the Wicked score is mostly very similar to the Wicked score from the play, which is a great thing, I think. But I feel like it could be more difficult to distinguish. Like Dune Part Two was deemed not eligible here, despite winning a lot of precursor awards, because a lot of that score is the same, similar to how John Williams kept getting nominated for new Star Wars movies, and a lot of it was the same. So I'm curious whether people will have difficulty seeing Amelia Perez and Wicked as scores and look, for
right.
instance, the three that I think are probably at the head: The Brutalist, Conclave, and The Wild Robot. Those three I think have been
Mm.
doing very well this award season. Don't forget that Volker Bertelmann, who did Conclave, won for All Quiet on the Western Front a few years ago, beating out Justin Hurwitz for Babylon. I was excited that I predicted The Room Next Door to be on this list. I know that I've been long championing that movie, and I think this is possibly its only hope left at this point because it has not shown up a lot of places.
I love that
I'm
movie.
also very happy to see The Fire Inside. That's a fun choice that I hadn't expected, and quite shocked to see Blink Twice on here.
Oh yeah.
No, I'm not shocked. I was thinking immediately that was going to be on here because there is specifically a scene that is like monumental and it opens to I'm That Girl, Beyonce, but it's like just perfectly timed. So the music is very intentional throughout, kind of in the same way the Challengers was, where if you remember much about that movie, then that score just kind of then creeps
Yeah.
up on you and you're like, oh wait, yeah, that did, you know, like where's this from? And then you're like, oh yeah. So yeah, I knew that that was going to be on there. But again, I also agree with you with the Brutalist, Conclave, and I think I had Challengers on there before Room Next Door. I love Room Next Door, but I for whatever reason they're like no. So I don't know what's happening.
Saturday Night missing from this category is also a really big deal. Because
Yeah.
John Baptiste did the score for
Yeah.
that. It was one that Sony was really campaigning for with the film. That missing out does not
That
play well. I also want to add what Abe said about the Wild Robot. I mean, I still think Wild Robot is probably one of the top three scores of the year. So the
Mhm.
fact that this is still getting a lot of love, I'm really happy for that. And I wouldn't be surprised. He's been doing Chris Bowers has been doing really well very early on with a lot of the critics awards. So hopefully, you know, that'll carry through. And I mean, maybe it'll be a potential upset.
Right. In terms of other omissions, also Nickel Boys, September 5, Seed of the Sacred Fig, The Substance. None of those were critical, but it's not great for any of those films. For The Substance, which had a pretty good day, that's a bit of a miss. Um, I also Baby Girl, interesting inclusion. Definitely a good day for Blitz, which is not doing
Yeah.
so well overall, and
Ugh.
Alien Romulus, which was I don't think on anyone's radar and got three
I
mentions,
would
which
have,
is
I predict, yeah, I didn't know that it would make the short list, but I was like, people are thinking about it because you know it's just that typical movie where you're like, this is what the music is about. This is
Yeah.
what it's for.
and I do want to emphasize Nosferatu as a very likely potential contender here. The problem is we're over, right? If we're talking about The Wild Robot, Wicked, Amelia Perez, The Brutalist, Challengers, Conclave,
Yeah.
like something's got to go. And then you still have like Beetlejuice, and Inside Out 2 if you're feeling nostalgic, or Sing Sing, which I don't think it's going to get nominated, but it's here, which is great.
Yeah.
So Well, who wants to take us into our next companion category, original song?
All right, I can take this one. Music from original song. We have Forbidden Road from Better Man, Winter Coat from Blitz, Compress Repress from Challengers, Never Too Late from Elton John, Never Too Late, El Mal from Emilia Perez, Mi Camino from Emilia Perez, Sick in the Head from Kneecap, Beyond from Moana 2, Tell Me It's You from Mufasa, The Lion King, Piece by Piece from Piece by Piece, Like a Bird for Sing Sing, The Journey from the 6888, Out of Oklahoma from Twisters, Kiss the Sky from The Wild Robot, Harper and Will Go West from Will and Harper. I think this one is actually a very interesting category. I always find it interesting when they nominate two songs from the same movie. I feel like it automatically kind of splits them. I understand why they chose both of these, but I really felt like to give it a fighting chance, it really should just be one. To pick one and let it go from there. Piece by Piece is having a very interesting year because there was a good amount of press for it and promo, but it just kind of fell off, and then it didn't even get nominated for the Golden Globes. So in terms of song and music, I was very surprised. I would like to see it go through. I thought that was a very imaginative documentary that is not getting a lot of play as being a documentary, you know. Of course, Harper and Will Go West. A lot of people are talking about that. Kiss the Sky. That is one that's getting a lot of play. I am most surprised by Beyond and Tell Me It's You, especially from Tell Me It's You, because like literally they had one press screening and it was yesterday. So I'm wondering if how many people are actually gonna be able to hear that and if it's gonna pick up. Moana 2, I will say, that was a surprise to me. That was really good. And they are actually doing like screeners and stuff where, although something recently happened with that screener, but that's the whole thing. It'll be interesting to see if that comes through though.
Yeah, I think the Moana music suffers significantly because it does not have Lin-Manuel Miranda. I would actually argue the music is the weakest part of the movie.
I thought it did. Oh wait, no, because he was doing Lion King.
Yeah,
or
yeah.
Mufasa.
So I don't think that song is. I don't know. I feel like that movie's slowly like word of mouth is not that strong on it. I know it made like a shit ton of money at the box office, but everyone's really realizing that it was a Disney Plus show, and kind of it feels like that. It feels like a huge step down. I agree with you, Stacey, on the two songs, and from Emilia Perez, which makes me think that maybe Kiss the Sky from Wild Robot will end up winning because it'll divide the votes between those two other songs. And I know that's not what Netflix wants to hear, but it's very possible. And I know that they were going to try to push Mi Camino a little bit more than the other one. And I do think that this is the stronger choice of the two, especially for Academy voters. But I do think that people are going to be confused. They're going to be like, which one was that song that I like? And they're going to pick one. And then the other one's going to be like, which one did I like? And they're going to pick the other one. So I would not be surprised if we see an upset here from Kiss the Sky, which again, everyone seems to universally love The Wild Robot. Almost every person I've talked to seems to universally love that movie.
Yeah, I will just say also I'm with the two of you. I think especially because Wicked being original score, I feel like with the original song, and this is like Emilia Perez's shot, and splitting it this way, it's like a third party candidate. I mean, you're just gonna lose votes. This is the chance for the Wild Robot. Also, I think Never Too Late is the other one, you know, when talking about Elton John, certainly that's a big possibility here.
Yes.
I also, again, I'm gonna go with my sentimental favorite, Kneecap. I don't think it really stands a chance, but I'll just give it a shout anyway.
I'll vote for anything called Sick in the Head.
It's wild.
I mean, Elton John is definitely I'm not going to say definitely, but very likely to be nominated just because it's Ellen John, right? Just like how we know Diane Warren for The Journey as a run-on joke is going to be nominated. We'll never win, but it's going to be nominated just because it's an ongoing joke.
I have so much sheet music from Diane Warren.
Every year we have one. We can wallpaper the background.
I would like to go against everyone in terms of the Emilia Perez thing and cite last year when Barbie had 3 songs shortlisted. You were now only allowed to have 2 nominated, so we knew they couldn't all be nominated. And then,
do you know what movie did that, Abe? Do you remember what movie did that?
Enchanted.
Yes.
Yeah, of course. But Barbie won for one of them, and I think they are okay to sing. I still think The Wild Robot is a strong contender, but I do not think it's a weak thing. I think, again, as we look at this, I'm also not sure people don't like Moana 2 as much as you think, Scott. I think that when we see this, it's possible that people really are still very strong on Amelia Perez. What's most interesting to me about this category is that I just double checked again, and I'm pretty sure my math is right. 12 out of 15 of these songs, the movies are in other shortlisted categories, and that is very rare. I feel like usually it's a lot of really random picks. Elton John, Never Too Late, and Piece by Piece probably just missed documentary, leaving Moana 2 as the only one that's not somewhere else. And that's really unusual. So maybe it's a lot of sort of more mainstream picks, because you have stuff like Out of Oklahoma from Twister that's a little more mainstream, like a Where the Crawdads Sing kind of Oscar nomination bid, that kind of thing. Wintercoat from Blitz. And of course, I wouldn't discount Forbidden Road from Better Man. I think that movie is having an interesting awards journey too. The only snub, one thing that I thought would show up was The End, which had 2 submissions. That's a musical from Joshua Oppenheimer. Not surprised it's not here, but I thought it might get in. And the only one that's a real surprise is Beautiful That Way from The Last Showgirl, which has Miley Cyrus as part of it, which is a Golden Globe nominee. So that is officially out of the running now. Not great for that film, but also doesn't really matter. But it is an interesting omission. And I wouldn't count Like a Bird from Sing Sing out. I think that film might not be a juggernaut, but it could show up in tiny little places like this.
So Sebastian Stan is a different man. Yes. And then Robbie Williams is a better man.
Yes, it's very confusing when they do these titles that don't make, everyone's just confused about it.
Just slightly different. Like, who are we? Okay.
One's a monkey.
Well, the other one's kind of a monkey if we're talking about
a perfect transition to the category of best sound, which is no longer 2 separate categories people couldn't really explain, and now is just one category as it has been for a while. I can go ahead and read these these lists, which I'm actually pleased to say. Oh no, I'm missing one. I've seen 9 out of 10. So we have Alien Romulus, Blitz, A Complete Unknown, Deadpool and Wolverine, Dune Part 2, Emilia Perez, Gladiator 2, Joker Folie à Deux, Wicked, and The Wild Robot. I actually think this is a sort of cool list because I feel like I could hear a lot of these movies. Like Blitz, to me, the best part of that movie is the scenes with the bombs dropping, and you really you feel those in a certain way because of the sound. And similarly, if you have any problems with Gladiator 2, I feel like the sound is one of its best elements. And
this
Deadpool and
one...
Wolverine too. Like there's a lot of loud mayhem in that movie.
This is one I would have loved to see Nickel Boys on, just because there was so much happening with sound, but it was so undercover and behind the scenes that when you're watching the scene, you don't think, oh, they have to record this 3 times because one person's holding the rig and then the sound is here and it's there and da-da-da-da-da. And that would have been really nice to see some recognition for that under sound. But that's kind of the only one that was like, it's kind of a bummer not to see it.
Yeah, I mean, a complete unknown is kind of weird for sound here, if I'm being honest. Like, I'm just like, really? Like, I don't know. Doesn't really.
Those live music moments, though, are what make the movie in a lot of ways. And so I feel like, the fact that they sound like you're really there, it doesn't feel like you're at a concert distant, but instead it feels like you're right there. Obviously made more of an impact on me than you.
Is that the thing now? Oh, go ahead, Sarah.
Oh, no, go ahead. What were you going to say?
I was going to say, is that the thing now that everyone's going to start doing is the live singing on set that's like supplemented? Because I know everyone learned a really nice lesson from Les Miserables with the Russell Crowe and everything. But I think with Wicked, they found a way to kind of perfect it a little bit. But I'm saying more and more, we're starting to have, they're singing live on set. It's like, okay.
Yeah. I think just this is the one category where I wouldn't be surprised if Wicked didn't win. Although you would think sound like obviously, but I feel like Deadpool and Wolverine, you've got a lot of like action here. Deadpool and Wolverine, Dune Part 2. Um, I don't know how Gladiator or Joker would fare, but the Wild Robot, like this is, I could see one of these winning.
I can see this being Joker's kind of consolation category where they're like, we want to
Yeah.
put you in for something.
You might be not, yeah, Joker might get a nomination for this. If they're gonna get, I mean, obviously, yeah, if they're gonna get anything, it would be in this category. But yeah, I certainly Wicked's gonna make the list, but as far as like who's gonna take it home, I don't know.
I think it's between Dune. I mean, listen, I mean, Alien Romulus is like really sound heavy, and it plays such a key point in the film. And I was talking about this yesterday online. Like, it's interesting because we always like people are like, oh, the substance. Everyone was so surprised that the substance is doing well, and everyone's like, well, it's horror, and I'm like, yeah, but it's kind of a comedy too. Like, it's like really kind of a comedy. It's about Hollywood. It's about ageism. Like, there's a lot of things going for it. And I think like having Alien in here, right? It's a beloved franchise. Like, it's a really beloved franchise. A lot of people watch this film. A lot of people like the sound design, the visual effects, and all this stuff. So it doesn't really surprise me. And the sound plays such a pivotal role that it wouldn't surprise me if that ends up being one of the top 5 on this category.
Yeah.
It's a slot that Nosferatu could have really used, I think, because that's another key part of that film, and the fact that it's not here, I don't know.
Yeah.
But this could also be like a little more mainstream than I feel like sound often is, which is somewhat unusual.
Yeah.
Well, that brings us to our last category, visual effects.
All right. Alien Romulus, Better Man, Civil War, Deadpool and Wolverine, Dune Part 2, Gladiator 2, Kingdom of the Planet of the Apes, Mufasa, The Lion King, Twisters, and Wicked.
So before we react a lot, I want to note that for some odd reason, this category previously has 20 finalists that then go down to 10. And we don't know all the nominees, but Variety was able to get a bunch of them. So I just want to note the ones that we knew, were on the original finalist list that didn't make the cut, just for some context. Stuff like Ghostbusters, Godzilla, X Kong here, which people would have been very upset if it got in, I think. A Quiet Place Day One, Spaceman, Furiosa, which might be a bit of a surprise it's not here, Beetlejuice. And I think the 2 films, one which would have been nice to see that was never really had much of a shot, which is The Fall Guy, which after this in sound, it's very sad it's not here. And the one that really just suffers from not being here is The Substance.
Yes. I feel really sad that Beetlejuice is not here. Mainly because they really were dedicated to bringing in the stop motion and really working on kind of like practical effects. So it's really sad that that's not listed here.
I find it hilarious that like you have Better Man, which, the visual effect is like mostly him being a monkey the whole time, up against Kingdom of the Planet of the Apes. It's like one monkey or a whole world of monkeys. Who's gonna win? So yeah, this one is always such a strange category because when people look at a movie, they might notice the hair, they might notice the costumes, they might even notice the backgrounds, that kind of thing. But visual effects and then like special effects are 2 kind of different things. And so I can see people being kind of confused because a lot of these had really fantastic visual effects. But then when you think about Mufasa, I'm like, I get why that's called a visual effect. And I mean, it is, but I wouldn't necessarily think of that as being, a visual effect. So yeah, this is a weird category for me.
I could see, oh, go ahead.
Sorry.
Oh, I was going to say, this is where I could see Alien placing Deadpool and Wolverine, Dune Part 2, Gladiator, and Wicked. That would be my top 5.
I like
why is Civil War here? I mean, that's a choice.
I don't mind that because I think the experience of watching Civil War in a theater is really, it's very, very intense, and there's just so much grandeur to it. And so I'm happy to. I think sound would have been another good mention for it. I think there's a lot that goes into it. It's interesting because I know that they put out posters of scenes that weren't in the film that were made using AI, and so that's an interesting sort of like reward that this is getting honored here, even though it's not in the film necessarily. But I don't know, I think it's an interesting choice. But because, like the Golden Globe Box Office Achievement Award, this is so much a sequels and remakes category. We
Yeah.
look at the Oscar history of stuff. The first Twister was nominated for Best Visual Effects. The
Yeah.
Lion King 2019 was nominated for Best Visual Effects. Planet of the Apes has done pretty well getting nominated. The first two Deadpools were not nominated. So that's interesting to see that there. And Alien, the visual effects that were nominated back in the past were very, very different than the kind of stuff we're seeing now. So I sort of feel like this is just Dune is going to win. It's a question of what else gets nominated.
Yeah. You know, I really have to bring this up. You know, now we're talking about all these short lists. Like, I want to know why production design doesn't have a short list, or costume design doesn't have a short list. Like, why? Like, what is this pick and choosing here?
Well,
Like,
so that's what I was kind of saying is like I think people they see those as like just one big kind of visual thing instead of understanding exactly how to kind of box each and every single one. Costume I am really surprised about because that's somewhere where Saturday Night would have definitely racked up, or but then again we have the Wicked of it all. So I think they kind of guess if you're going to win in one of those categories, you're going to get them all.
This is my argument for more categories everywhere all the time. But I also know that, like, the Emmys used to do it where they had, finalists in each category that would sort of get released and then not really, we less and less as it went on. And it's like cool to know, for instance, that like John Krasinski was always on the shortlist for The Office, but he never got nominated. Like, that's an interesting thing. And it could ultimately be more frustrating to see what doesn't get there. But isn't there something about being shortlisted for an Oscar? Like, I know for these international films, for instance, it's a really big deal because that's for the country, for all these things, like to know that it's shortlisted and to look back at the history year to year of that. So I think we should have shortlists in every category for every award that's ever given out.
yeah,
But I'm
yeah,
not in charge of this stuff, so I don't get to decide that, which we already said,
Yet.
would be nicer in some ways. But it's fun to talk about this stuff.
Mm-hmm.
yeah. I don't know. There's just certain things where when I see certain movies pop up over and over again, I just kind of go like, do people watch movies throughout the year, or do they just watch like the 20 top movies on Gold Derby? Like, I mean, I really asked this question, partially joking, partially serious, because I just feel like, where's the variety of stuff? Like, I mean, like when we're talking about, I mean, Abe, you said this, like Fall Guy. Listen, I get that not everybody loves Fall Guy, and it's completely understandable why you wouldn't like Fall Guy, because I think it's very overindulgent with a lot of the stuff that happens in the movie. But when you look at things like the sound of that movie, or what they were able to pull off again, visual effects wise with the movie, with the explosions and stuff like that, you go, how is this not here? And then you get like Better Man, to Stacey's point, where it's like you literally have Kingdom of the Planet of the Apes by the same company who did it, by the way. And you're like, you have one, all that whole world versus one. It's like, why is this being recognized here when there's something else is way more deserving, like a Fall Guy or a Beetlejuice, to be in this category?
I remember back in 2002, when Frida, I think, beat the Time Machine for best makeup. And everybody's like, the one eyebrow more than the millions of orcs or something, or orcs, whatever,
Yeah.
And what's interesting also to me is we're talking about like the overall Oscar race. Wicked had a great day. Amelia Perez had a great day, but The Brutalist and Conclave barely eligible for anything. And Honora, which might still be the front runner to win Best Picture, nothing.
Totally.
Now,
I don't
think
think so. I think that movie has fallen off, and I think it's going to continue to fall off as
I
time
think it
goes
was
on.
only makeup and hairstyling was the only thing it ever might have really gotten in
Yeah.
for. And so, again, The Substance also had a pretty good day, and so that's odd. But I remember this also from like the Emmys when they would do like the creative arts beforehand, which they still do. But the idea that like you can have Stranger Things win all these technical awards, that doesn't mean it's going to win the top
No.
prize. And
No.
so, again, if we had costumes on, if we had other things, could you see films like If Beale Street Could Talk, as a great example, a couple years ago, where it missed like all the guilds for costumes, production design, etc., and then it missed the Oscars also. And so you see how that happens. And so
Well,
I
I kind
don't
of
think this
wonder
changes too much. Please, Stacey.
about the Last Showgirl. That's one that really is kind of fall off, and it really doesn't deserve to, because it's actually a very I enjoyed it quite a bit, and it's a very interesting feature. But when we're talking about costumes and makeup, I mean, you would think that that would be a shoo-in, but again, we kind of running into that thing of realistic versus the kind of overly ornate, that kind of thing. I was thinking about this with Nickel Boys. It's been on my brain lately. Hamish Linklater, there's an article that they show in the movie, and it shows him as an old man sitting in a rocking chair, and I'm like, did you sit in a makeup chair for 3 to 6 hours so you could get this one picture? And so when I think about makeup, those are the things that I think about, and it's so hard to get that to be universal across the board, because when people hear makeup, they each think something different, and that all goes into one category, so it's really tough.
Yeah.
I do think, especially in an era which we're almost out of, I guess, with 10 Best Picture nominees, or I don't even know what's happening with that, but the Best Picture nominees having 10, like, you still can have films like Nickel Boys, Deborah Five, etc., that like don't get a lot of nominations and end up just sort of feeling tacked on there. Selma is the best
Right.
example, right? Best Picture and Best Original Song, nothing else. And I feel like this year, when we're looking like Best Actor and Best Supporting Actor, I feel like they're not really enough nominees almost to fill the list, but every other category, all these below the line things feel like they're overflowing. And we could easily, like, if there was a way you could nominate it and it'd be like the way Best Picture was briefly with between 5 and 10 nominees, where you could essentially, if enough movies get enough nominations, one category could have 17 nominations, another could have 3.
Yeah.
Wouldn't be very good for those who like the statistics year to year, but it'd be an interesting way to do things. So. Well, do we have any closing thoughts? Anything we're very excited about, disappointed about going into the next phase of this, which is pretty much quiet. And then I guess SAG is the next real big thing coming up.
Yeah.
This is going to be a wild season. I can already tell, especially after a holiday break, and especially after people kind of get done with Sundance, and then they're like, all right, back to it, back to the promo, back to the marketing. Then it's going to be just crazy.
My feeling is that I think we're going to see the love spread out at different award shows. I don't know that necessarily like the Globes will be an indication of what's to come at the Oscars. I kind of get the feeling this year while I still have my front runners in my head, I do think that there's enough like with the substance, let's say, or The Last Showgirl, which personally I would like to see recognized. There's enough love to go around with all the award shows, so it wouldn't surprise me if what we see take home Best Picture at the Globes is different than what we see take home Best Picture at the Oscars. Maybe.
Yeah. And I think like what to point that out, like Hitman right now, Glenn Powell is like the front runner to win the Globe for comedy actor, right? But like realistically, he's not even going to be nominated for an Oscar.
True.
Like, so like that's sort of the weird thing of the in between of like having the split categories and having the split actors and, in those categories is that you're creating like, is it going to be this one or is it going to be this one? But it's going to be very, very obvious. It's sort of like last year, am I mistaken? Or was the year before where the Fablemans won a lot at the Globes and then ended up being like nothing? So I always feel like the Globe sort of has like one part of it right, and then the other half is just sort of like, oh no, this is gonna like seal the fate of the rest of these movies. And I think Anora also could be in trouble for that very reason by being in the comedy or musical category, because like you and I talked about, Siri, like I really think Wicked is going to dominate that category. And I think it's going to hurt Anora with that. And it really depends on what Critics' Choice does with Anora, if it's going to have that rebound after it.
I do want to say also, to the point of Best Picture, I'm still standing by that I think it is going to be Wicked universally. But I think when we're talking about the other categories like Best Actor, Actress, or Supporting Actor, Supporting Actress, I feel like those are the ones that are going to be up for grabs. So.
Pretty much. I can see like I can see Globes giving so it's Complete Unknown in drama, Abe, right? It's in drama, right? So I can see Timothy
Really?
Chalamet winning at the Globes, right? But then someone else going to Critics' Choice and winning that category. And I think for supporting actress, I think we've all kind of in agreement here that it's going to be a split between Zoe Saldana and Ariana Grande. Like where you're going to see them her at one and then the next one at the other, and it's just going to keep going back and back and back and forth. But it's going to be fascinating. I really think that poor Angelina Jolie,
Yeah.
she's really going to have to hit the ground running come the new year because I think she fell off quite a bit.
Because she was a lock for a hot second, and then it was like, oh, don't get sleepy.
My argument in defense of Angelina Jolie's chances is Meryl Streep winning for The Iron Lady. That it is still possible to, and I actually think her performance in Maria is quite good, and probably better in some ways than Meryl's in The Iron Lady. I'm not sure if I'm allowed legally to say anything bad about Meryl Streep. That wasn't necessarily something bad, just not entirely
His
praiseworthy.
thoughts do not reflect our thoughts.
I
Just
did like
that.
personally. I like The Iron Lady, I think, more than most people. But in any case, I do think that she's still in there. I also think that when we're talking about the Golden Globes, I think The Substance possibly stands a better chance of winning Best Comedy than Wicked, because those are both hilarious movies, right? Let's go to Wicked and Substance to laugh. And Amelia Perez is a real laugh, right? Honora, these things are so funny.
Hilarious.
Oh man. But I think SAG is going to throw us for a loop, and I think we have spent plenty of time today talking about all that, and so we're going to have to come back, do some SAG predictions next. And this has been a great chance to talk about some of these. And I know that I am now going to be like all about subtitles, documentaries, international features, some of the shorts. We're going to come back and do a lot more stuff in the future.
Yay.
Awesome.
I'm excited.
I am Abe Friedtanzer.
I'm Stacey Yvonne.
I'm Scott Menzel.
I'm Sari Cohen.
Thanks for being with us today.